Around the year 1177 BC, the most advanced world the planet had ever seen simply stopped. Not one city, almost all of them. Mighty Mycenae, the Hittite Empire, the great trading city of Ugarit, Egypt, the eternal superpower, knocked off its throne forever. Within 2 generations, the entire civilized world of the Eastern Mediterranean went dark, and stayed dark for centuries. And here's the part nobody tells you. They didn't fall one by one like dominoes pushed by an invader. They fell together almost at once, all wired into the same dying machine. You know the version from school. Out of nowhere, a mysterious enemy appears on the water. Strange ships, strange warriors. Historians gave them a name straight out of legend: the Sea Peoples. They sweep across the coast, burning every great city to the ground, and a golden age of bronze drowns in fire and salt. It's a clean, satisfying story, and it's almost completely wrong, because the deeper you look, the more those raiders look less like the cause of the collapse, and more like the first people running from it. Start with one strange fact that breaks the Sea People's theory in half. These weren't a fleet of soldiers. The Egyptian records describe something far stranger: whole peoples on the move. Warriors, yes, but also women, children, and ox carts piled high with everything they owned. Not an army out for plunder, a people fleeing. And here's the question that changes everything. What were they running from? What disaster was so total that entire nations packed up their lives and sailed into the unknown, looking for any land that still had food? They weren't the storm. They were caught in it. To understand why everything fell at once, you have to understand what the Bronze Age actually was. This was the world's first globalization. Copper mined on Cyprus. Tin hauled thousands of miles from the mountains of the east. Egyptian gold, Mycenaean oil and pottery, cedar from Lebanon, all flowing across the sea on the same routes, in the same ships, to the same palaces. It was dazzling. It was rich. And it was about to show the world the terrible price of being connected. Here is the secret weakness hiding at the center of it all. The age was named for bronze, and bronze is a recipe. Copper, common enough, mixed with tin, roughly 9 parts to 1. The hardest metal on earth. The bronze that made every sword, every spearhead, every plow that fed an army. But almost nobody had tin. It came from a handful of distant sources, carried halfway across the known world along a fragile chain of traders and middlemen. Cut that chain anywhere, and the whole age loses its edge, literally. No tin, no bronze, no power. Now look at how these kingdoms were actually run. Nothing like you imagine. There was no free market, no merchants chasing profit. Everything ran through the palace. The king's scribes recorded every sheep, every jar of oil, every bolt of cloth. The palace gathered the harvest, stored it in vast warehouses, and handed it back out to soldiers, craftsmen, priests. Centralized control of breathtaking reach, with one fatal flaw. It only works while it works. If the center fails, the warehouses run dry, the records burn, there is no backup. The people don't just lose their king, they lose the only machine that fed them. So what broke the machine? The first killer came from the sky. Scientists drilling into ancient lake beds and seafloors read the climate of the past in layers of pollen and dust. In the decades around 1200 BC, they find the same chilling signal across the region. The rains failed. A drought settled over the eastern Mediterranean and didn't lift for a generation. Not a bad year. A mega drought. The kind that doesn't kill a harvest. It kills a civilization's ability to feed itself year after grinding year. And we don't have to guess what that felt like. The people wrote it down, baked into clay when their cities burned. From the Hittite king, a desperate plea to Egypt. Send grain. It is a matter of life and death. From a coastal ruler, the people are starving. Save their lives. King, writing to king, the most powerful men alive, reduced to begging for food. The picture is undeniable. This wasn't sudden. The great powers were already starving, already leaning on each other to survive, before a single enemy ship appeared on the horizon. Stop and sit with that for a second. We picture the Bronze Age ending in a single dramatic invasion. But the deepest wound was something far quieter. Empty granaries and a sky that wouldn't rain. You cannot field an army of starving men, or keep a city loyal when the warehouses are bare. The drought didn't need to storm the walls. It hollowed out everything behind them first. By the time the real chaos arrived, the great kingdoms were already running on empty. Then the second killer struck. From below, the eastern Mediterranean sits on a violent web of fault lines, and archaeologists digging through the ruins keep finding the same horrifying signature, city after city. Collapsed walls fallen in the same direction. Skeletons crushed beneath toppled stone. Whole streets snapped sideways. Scholars call it an earthquake storm. A cluster of massive quakes striking across a few brutal decades. Your kingdom is already starving, and then the very ground beneath your palace, your walls, your temples shakes it all into rubble. Notice what's happening. We went looking for one villain, the raider from the sea. Instead, we keep finding a stack of disasters landing on each other. Drought, famine, earthquakes. Now watch how they feed each other. The drought weakens the harvest. The weak harvest empties the warehouses. The earthquake smashes the palace that controlled them. And the moment the palace fails, the trade network it anchored unravels. Each blow makes the next one deadlier, not a sequence of separate misfortunes, a chain reaction. And here is the killer that turned regional disasters into total collapse. The network itself. Every palace depended on trade. Tin for bronze, grain in a famine, luxury goods that proved a king was a king. It all moved through the same ports. Now pull one thread. One kingdom falls to drought and quake. Its port goes dark. And every kingdom downstream, even ones that survived the drought and the quakes, suddenly can't get tin, can't get grain, can't pay their soldiers or feed their cities. A collapse in one place becomes famine 1,000 miles away. You want to see the whole collapse in a single city? Ugarit. Ugarit was a jewel, one of the richest trading ports in the world. In its final hours, a king sat writing a letter. The clay tablet was found in a kiln, baked hard by the very fire that destroyed the city. Never sent. In it, the king cries out that enemy ships have appeared. His fleet and army are away, his country defenseless, and his cities burning. Then the letters stop. Ugarit was burned, abandoned, never rebuilt. 3,000 years of silence, until archaeologists dug it from the dust. So go back to those mysterious raiders. Knowing what we know, who do you think they really were? They weren't a single nation with a single plan. They were the wreckage of the collapse itself. Displaced farmers whose land had turned to dust. Sailors with no port left to sail to. Soldiers whose kingdom had stopped paying them. Whole communities uprooted by famine, taking to the sea because it was the only road left. Desperate people, armed and starving, crashing into other desperate people. They didn't start the fire. They were sparks thrown off a world already burning. And here is the proof that even the strongest couldn't escape it. Egypt, the oldest, richest, most stable power of them all, did fight off the great waves of migrants and raiders. Pharaoh's armies won the battles. The hieroglyphs boast of victory. By the standard of every other kingdom, Egypt survived. But survival is not winning. The Egypt that walked away from those battles was a broken thing. Its empire abroad evaporated. Its grip on trade was gone. Central power crumbled into squabbling local rulers. Egypt as a superpower never came back. It won the war and lost the world. Now look at what was actually lost. This wasn't a change of kings, it was a fall into darkness. Writing itself vanished. The Mycenaean script that scribes had used to run whole kingdoms disappeared, forgotten so completely that Greece would be illiterate for centuries. Great cities shrank into villages. Trade routes that had hummed for centuries fell silent. Populations collapsed. This is what historians call a dark age, and they mean it literally. The bright, glittering world of the Bronze Age didn't decline. It was switched off, Here is the lesson buried in the ashes, and it's the opposite of what we usually believe. We tend to think connection means strength. The more partners, the more trade, the safer everyone is. The Bronze Age proves the terrifying truth hidden inside that idea. The very thing that made these kingdoms rich, their deep, tangled dependence on each other, was the thing that killed them. A network that shares prosperity also shares disaster. Their strength and their weakness were the same, which finally answers the question we started with. Why did everything fall together? Because by 1177 BC, these weren't separate civilizations. They were one system, a single web of palaces, ports, and trade routes, all drinking from the same dwindling well. A single kingdom can survive a drought. It can rebuild after an earthquake. It can fight off raiders, but hit a tightly connected system with all of it at once. Drought, famine, quakes, broken trade, desperate migrants, and the failures don't add up. They multiply. The lights didn't go out one by one. They went out together, wired to the same dying grid. So why does this matter? 3,000 years later. Because the real way the Bronze Age died is far more unsettling than the way we're taught. The Sea Peoples got the blame for 3,000 years. But they were only the symptom, the drifting evidence that the real machine had already broken. Connection without resilience is a beautiful, gleaming trap. The tighter the web, the harder the fall. A whole world died around 1177 BC. Not because it was weak, but because it was so rich and so completely tangled together that it had no way to fail safely. Drought, famine, earthquakes, and a dying trade network finished in 2 generations what no enemy could. So here's my question. Of all of it, the mega drought, the earthquakes, the famine, the broken trade, which one do you think really pushed the Bronze Age over the edge? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe, because at Empire Archives, we don't just tell you that civilizations fall. We trace exactly how and why the greatest powers in history collapse from within.